You have just disappeared from the modern world. It is 1867, and you are waking up on a lumpy straw mattress in the heart of rural England. The air is so still you can hear the darkness itself. Before you open your eyes, feel the weight of a life you've never lived, but somehow. Remember, you blink slowly, and as your vision clears, the faint, gray silhouettes of a small room begin to emerge. Darkness still clings to the corners of the ceiling, stubborn and thick. Beneath you, the mattress is a heavy sack stuffed with dried straw that rustles and crackles with every small shift of your weight. It is lumpy, uneven, and firm, forcing your body to acknowledge the solid reality of the ground beneath it. It is exactly 4:30 in the morning. While the rest of the world seems to be suspended in a deep, dreamless slumber, your day as a Victorian farmer has already begun. There are no buzzing alarms here, no glowing screens to greet your eyes, only the cold, silent command of the early hour. You are now a farm laborer, a vital cog in the massive machinery of the British Empire. Your hands, though currently soft and unblemished, are now tasked with the monumental responsibility of feeding a nation that is growing faster than the soil can keep up with. You are the heartbeat of the empire, the silent strength that sustains the Industrial Revolution from the furrowed earth. The air inside the cottage is crisp and thin, carrying a sharp, biting edge that makes your breath form tiny, ghost-like clouds in front of your face. The fire in the grate has long since died down to gray ash, leaving the room to the mercy of the morning chill. As you lay there, the gravity of this transition begins to settle over you. Your modern body is looking for a screen, a light, a distraction, but there are none. You have a purpose, a direct, physical connection to the survival of thousands. However, almost everything about this new existence is designed to test your limits. Your modern body, accustomed to the gentle ergonomics of padded chairs and climate-controlled rooms, is utterly unprepared for the raw physical demands that the next few hours will impose upon it. Your mind, too, will have to learn a different kind of patience, a slow, seasonal endurance that has been lost in the frantic pace of the future. Focus now on the simple, steady rhythm of your breathing. Each inhale brings in the scent of cold stone, old wood, and the faint, lingering smell of coal smoke. Each exhale is a slow, deliberate release of the tension held in your shoulders. Close your eyes again for just a few seconds. Listen to the absolute silence of the countryside before the birds begin their dawn chorus. It is a heavy, profound silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the cottage timbers adjusting to the temperature or the rattle of a loose window pane in the breeze. Feel the cool air on your forehead, contrasting with the fading warmth of the heavy, woolen blankets. Your pulse is steady, slow, and calm, grounding you in this specific moment in history. There is a strange, quiet power in this early hour, a sense of being part of an unbroken chain of human effort that stretches back for centuries. You are not just a person. You are a participant in the Earth's own clock, governed by the sun and the seasons rather than artificial construct. But the stillness cannot last forever. The farm is waiting, and the animals are already stirring in the darkness of the barn. Before you can step out into the frost-covered fields to meet the rising sun, you must first navigate the small, intimate reality of the place you now call home. The humble cottage around you holds its own stories, written in the dirt of the floor and the soot on the walls, and it is here in this quiet, cramped space that your journey truly begins. Your cottage stands as a silent, humble testament to the persistent and unyielding realities of Victorian rural life, a small, weathered dwelling known in the local tongue as a two up, two down. This simple architectural term means your entire world, your whole sanctuary from the morning frost, is contained within 4 cramped and intimate spaces, 2 small rooms downstairs for the daily business of living and cooking, and 2 even smaller bedrooms tucked away upstairs, where the heavy ceiling slants low and protective against the. There is no grand hallway to buffer these rooms, no wasted space for decoration or vanity. There is only the functional, honest density required to house a laboring family close together. As you move in the half-light, the ancient floorboards above you groan under the slightest shift of weight, echoing through the thin, wooden structure like a slow, rhythmic heartbeat that has skipped for over a century. Every timber in this house seems to settle with a sigh, a deep, structural moan that tells the story of many winters past. The thin glass of the windows, fragile and clouded with age, holds a chill so deep it feels like a frozen breath against your skin. They rattle incessantly with every morning breeze that sweeps across the damp English valley, a persistent wooden chatter that becomes a background hum to your early morning thoughts. Looking closely in the dim gray light, you can see the history of the house written on these very panes. Several have cracked over the decades, and each has been carefully, lovingly patched with layers of yellowed paper and flour paste to keep the worst of the biting drafts at bay. These windows were never intended for expansive, romantic views of the horizon. They are small, practical portals that struggle to let in even the palest gray light of the British dawn. You watch as the condensation trickles slowly down the glass, a tiny silver river marking the boundary between your small world and the vast cold outdoors. Above your head, the heavy weight of the roof thick thatch, or cold, dark slate holds its own ancient secrets. It is a roof that breathes with the humidity of the countryside, a roof that inevitably leaks whenever the heavy, persistent rains begin to fall, which, as you have come to realize, is a frequent and familiar occurrence in this emerald landscape. You have learned to recognize the specific, metallic, drip, drip, drip of water hitting a strategically placed tin bucket in the far corner, a steady, hypnotic sound that persists long after the storm clouds have moved toward the sea. It is a reminder of the house's vulnerability and its age, a rhythmic clock that counts the passing of the storm. The dampness lingers in the air, a soft, heavy mist that clings to the walls and settles into the fabric of your life, making everything feel slightly weighted and slow. As you finally gather the will to lower your feet from the edge of the straw mattress, you do not feel the soft, plush embrace of a bedside rug or the familiar, polished warmth of modern hardwood. Instead, your bare, vulnerable souls meet the cold, uncompromising reality of the ground itself. The floor beneath you is packed dirt. It is a surface that has been trodden flat and hard by generations of heavy work boots, cold to the touch, and sometimes slightly damp with the rising, invisible moisture of the English earth. This is a floor that breathes and shifts with the turning of the seasons, growing dusty and fine in the parching heat of August and turning into a dark, chilled, and unyielding expanse during the long, unforgiving winter months. There is no insulation here, no modern barrier between your skin and the ancient, deep soil of England, save for this thin, hardened layer of clay, grit, and history. You feel the texture of the earth, the small grains of sand, and the coolness that seems to travel from the very core of the planet up into your bones. Close your eyes for a long moment and simply listen to the house as it settles into the early hour, a living thing in its own right. Imagine the faint, steady whistle of the wind as it finds the tiny, microscopic cracks in the window frames and the uneven gaps beneath the heavy oak door. It is a soft, shushing sound, like the distant, rhythmic retreat of the tide on a pebbled shore. Breathe in deeply, filling your lungs with the scent of the home, the metallic, honest tang of the damp earth beneath your feet, the faint, lingering aroma of cold wood, ash from the previous night's hearth, and the clean, sharp scent of the white frost waiting just outside the threshold. Everything here is natural, unrefined, and deeply grounded. There is a profound, holy simplicity in this space, a total lack of modern clutter that allows your weary mind to focus entirely on the weight of the present moment. The house does not demand your attention. It does not cry out for repair or improvement in this quiet hour. It simply provides a sturdy, silent shell for your transition from the world of dreams to the world of stone and soil. But the pervasive chill of the early morning is beginning to seep through the thick stone walls, and the unyielding cold of the dirt floor serves as a physical reminder that the day's labor is already calling your name. The fire in the grate needs tending before any warmth can truly return to these rooms, and your breath continues to form soft, white clouds in the dimness. To stand fully on this floor, to rise and face the damp silver air of the cottage, you must first reach for the garments draped over the heavy wooden chest at the foot of your bed. You must now prepare to shed the velvet softness of sleep and dress yourself in the rough, functional, and scratchy clothes of a Victorian laborer for your transformation into a man of a. The soil is nearly complete. You reach slowly for the heavy garments draped over the weathered wooden chest, the fabric feeling stiff, cold, and surprisingly substantial in your grip. As you pull on the rough woolen clothing, a sharp, immediate scratchiness announces itself against your skin, a primal, honest sensation that modern sensibilities, accustomed to the softness of treated fabrics, have long since forgot. This is not the refined, chemically treated knitwear of the future. This is wool in its most raw and primitive form. It is coarse and minimally processed, still carrying the faint, earthy, and oily scent of the flock. There is no silk lining to shield your skin, no gentle blend to offer a soothing touch, only the direct, unyielding embrace of the natural fiber. Every small movement you make causes the fabric to shift and protest, its tiny natural barbs creating a persistent, rhythmic prickle that serves as a constant, tactile reminder of the demanding physical world you now inhabit. The shirt and trousers beneath your hands tell a long, silent story of years of endurance and desperate mending. Their surfaces are a complex landscape of reinforced seams and patches placed upon older patches. In this era of 1867, clothing is never a disposable commodity. It is a precious, hard-earned luxury that must be maintained and resurrected until the very last fibers give way to the elements. You can feel the distinct extra thickness of the heavy thread where a deep tear was closed by the flickering light of a candle, and the slight, rigid stiffness of a patch harvested from an even older, retired garment. These clothes were designed with absolute, uncompromising function in mind, rather than a single moment of comfort. They were built to withstand the abrasive dust of the threshing barn, the relentless damp of the spring fields, and the crushing weight of the harvest. They are thick, dense, and honest, trapping a thin, precious layer of your own body heat within their heavy weave, creating a private microclimate of survival against the encroaching morning chill. As you sit heavily on the edge of the straw bed to finish your transformation, you reach for your work, boots stiff, unyielding objects crafted from thick, blackened leather. They lack the cushioned insoles, the springy rubber, or the ergonomic arch support of modern footwear. Instead, they are rigid and unforgiving, requiring the full strength of your cold hands just to pull them over your thick hand-knitted woolen socks. As you stand and put your weight upon them, you realize with a start that the leather soles are startlingly thin, worn down by countless miles of trudging across flint, furrows, and frozen mud. They offer only the most minimal protection against the cold, damp earth beneath your feet, allowing the biting chill of the dirt floor to seep upward through the leather and into your bones in a matter of seconds. Your toes feel the sudden, sharp pinch of the cold, a stark physical reminder that in this Victorian world, the boundary between the human body and the raw elements is dangerously thin. Take a long, deep breath and simply feel the immense weight of this ensemble as it anchors you to the floor. There is a strange grounded comfort in the heaviness of the fabric as it settles firmly onto your shoulders and chest. Think of it not as a burden to be endured, but as a sturdy, reliable shield, a barrier of natural fiber and human craft that stands between your warmth and the frost-glittered fields outside. The wool is thick and honest, a heavy mantle of responsibility that connects you to the earth and the flock. Listen to the soft, muffled rustle of the fabric as you move, a low, rhythmic sound that speaks of durability, patience, and old-world craftsmanship. There is a quiet, singular focus in this ritual of dressing, a slow preparation that readies your mind as much as your body for the long, repetitive labor that lies ahead. The cottage remains dim, the shadows long and deep, with the only light coming from the faint silver-gray glow beginning to press against the window panes. But you are now armored. You are prepared for the elements. Your body is wrapped in layers of necessity, history, and warmth, and the initial irritating scratch of the wool has already begun to fade into a dull, familiar heat against your skin. Dressed for the long, demanding hours of toil that await you in the fields, you turn your attention away from the bed and toward the small coal fire in the grate. It smolders low and orange in the gray ash, waiting for your touch to bring it back to life so that you may finally prepare the simple, heavy meal that will sustain you as the sun begins its ascent. The small coal fire in the heavy iron grate smolders with a low, rhythmic pulse, its deep orange embers winking slowly through a thick, velvet layer of gray ash. It provides just enough radiating warmth to take the sharpest, most painful edge off the morning chill, though your breath still forms soft, dissipating clouds that dance briefly in the dimness of the kitchen before vanishing into the rafters. This fire is the sacred heart of your early morning ritual. Without its steady, patient heat, there would be no hot water for washing the sleep from your eyes, no small comfort to return to when the day is done, and most importantly, no breakfast to sustain the grueling, back-breaking hours of labor that lie ahead. You move with slow, deliberate care in the shadows, tending the coals with a heavy poker and heating the seasoned iron pot. The quiet, rhythmic scrape of the metal against the ancient stone hearth echoes softly in the profound silence of the cottage, a sound that feels as old as the hills themselves. There is a deeply meditative quality to the crackle of the newly igniting fuel, a small controlled spark of life and hope in the heavy, pre-dawn stillness of 1867. As the iron pot begins to release a faint, ghostly steam, you prepare the simple, utilitarian meal of a Victorian farm laborer. A thin, honest porridge made from a handful of coarse flour, a generous splash of water, and perhaps a small, precious bit of butter if the family's meager resources have allowed for such a treat. This is not a meal designed for the indulgence of the senses or delicate, complex flavor. It is a meal of pure, functional survival. As you lift the heavy wooden spoon, the porridge sits dense and grounding in your stomach, offering a slow, burning source of energy, a foundation of calories that you will desperately need once your boots meet the furrows of the field. The texture is thick and substantial, a warm weight that spreads slowly through your core, grounding you in the physical reality of the earth. You consume it in the quiet half-light, seated on a sturdy wooden stool, where the only sounds are the rhythmic, metallic clink of the spoon against the bowl, and the occasional, lonely rattle of the window pane as the morning breeze tests the glass. To wash down this heavy, somber fare, you reach not for a cup of steaming coffee or fine tea luxuries reserved for the wealthy in their manor houses, but for a simple vessel of small beer or ale. Even at this gray hour of 4:30 in the morning, the ale is a vital necessity of Victorian life. The local wells and streams are often unreliable, plagued by the invisible risks of contamination that your modern world has long since conquered. The small beer provides essential hydration and a few extra vital calories for the heavy work of plowing and sowing. Its slightly bitter, fermented taste, a familiar and reliable companion to the morning porridge. It is a practical, historical choice, a form of liquid bread that has sustained the men and women of the soil for centuries, ensuring you are sufficiently armored for the relentless, unyielding demands of the English landscape. Close your eyes for a long moment and visualize the thin, silver ribbons of steam rising slowly from your bowl, curling and twisting like tiny dancers in the cool, stagnant air of the room. Focus your mind entirely on the repetitive, hypnotic motion of the wooden spoon up and down, a steady, ancient rhythm that mirrors the calm beating of your own heart. Feel the lingering warmth of the ceramic bowl against your calloused palms, a fleeting but profound comfort in a world of hard edges, cold stone, and physical toil. The world outside the cottage door is still painted in deep shades of indigo, charcoal, and gray, but here, by the smoldering embers of the grate, there is a sense of preparation, a quiet gathering of strength. Breathe in the comforting, acrid scent of the coal smoke and the sweet, earthy aroma of the cooked grain, letting the total simplicity of the moment settle your weary mind and prepare your spirit for the transition to the outdoors. With the necessary calories now settling into your system and the heavy porridge providing a warm, reliable center, you feel a renewed sense of readiness, a quiet bracing for the day. But the deep contemplative stillness of the cottage is gradually interrupted by the impatient, primal sounds drifting in from the yard. The livestock are stirring in their stalls, their lowing and grunting echoing against the stone walls of the outbuildings as they sense the approaching light. The animals in the barn have begun to call for you, their voices a persistent reminder that in the world of 1867, the needs of the farm and the hunger of the beasts wait for no man's convenience. You set down your empty bowl, pull your heavy woolen coat tighter around your shoulders, and prepare to leave the relative safety of the hearth to step across the threshold into the damp, biting, pre-dawn chill of the farmyard. Setting down your empty ceramic bowl and pulling your heavy, scratchy woolen coat much tighter around your broad shoulders, you step across the worn stone threshold into the damp, biting pre-dawn chill of the farmyard. The air is sharp and thin enough to taste, a cold draught that fills your lungs and awakens your senses with a sudden, icy clarity. The ground beneath your stiff, thin-soled leather boots is frozen into a hard, unforgiving crust, and every step you take produces a sharp, rhythmic crunch on the frost-covered yard, the only sound breaking the deep indigo stillness of the early hour. You trudge slowly toward the low silhouette of the small barn, your breath trailing behind you in long, ghostly plumes of white steam. As you approach the heavy, weathered wooden doors, the animals within sense your arrival. They greet you with a low, impatient chorus of sounds, the soft lowing of the cow and the gentle rustle of straw as they shift their weight. Their collective body heat has created a natural, musky, and comforting warmth that spills out from the cracks in the wood to meet you in the cold. Inside the deep, velvet shadows of the barn, your cow, Daisy, lows softly to you, her udder full and heavy, her large, suspicious eyes watching your every move in the dimness. You reach for the familiar three-legged wooden stool and the heavy metal pail, settling in for the first great labor of the day. At first your fingers are stiff and clumsy with the morning cold, struggling to find the necessary fluid rhythm to coax the warm milk from the udder. But soon, the immense heat of the animal begins to seep through the friction and into your palms, and the work dissolves into a quiet, meditative flow. These creatures are far more than mere livestock. They are your absolute lifelines, the fundamental, living barrier between your family and the cold specter of hunger. Cow's rich milk, the chicken's speckled eggs, and eventually the salt pork from the pig in its sty are the crucial supplements that keep the lean months at bay when the fields are barren and wages are thin. Without the constant care of these humble beings, your family would struggle to survive the turning of the Victorian year. Close your eyes for a moment and focus entirely on the rich sensory tapestry of the barn's interior. Listen to the high-pitched musical ping of the first steady streams of milk hitting the bottom of the empty metal pail, a sound that gradually deepens and softens into a muffled, frothy splash as the container slowly fills to the brim. Focus your mind on the steady, rhythmic chewing of the livestock as they grind their dry hay sound like a soft, ancient wooden clock, marking the passing of the pre-dawn hour. The atmosphere here is thick and nourishing, heavy with the scent of dried summer grass, sweet, warm milk, and the honest, earthy aroma of the animals. Feel the steam rising in gentle curls from the warm milk, and the subtle, rhythmic shift of the cow's weight as she sighs against the stool. In this small, enclosed sanctuary, there is a profound sense of mutual dependence, a quiet, shared purpose that transcends the harsh, unyielding demands of the world outside. Once the milking is finally complete, and you have scattered the golden grain for the chickens, you take a moment to strain the liquid through a clean, coarse cloth with serious practiced care. In this age, before the complexities of germ theory are understood, this ritual of cleanliness remains a vital tradition passed down through generations. Some of this precious milk will be set aside in the cool of the dairy to allow the heavy cream to rise for churning into butter, while the rest will provide the essential, life-giving nutrition your growing children require. There is a fleeting, deep-seated satisfaction in seeing the full, foaming pails, a tangible, honest result of your morning's effort. But the farm's unrelenting, seasonal schedule waits for no man's satisfaction, and the true, back-breaking labor of the day is only just beginning to stir. The first true, fragile light of dawn is now breaking over the jagged eastern horizon, painting the rolling, mist-covered landscape in delicate shades of soft pink violet. The silver frost glitters like a million crushed diamonds across the yard, and the long, distorted shadows of the stone outbuildings stretch slowly toward the gate. Your body, though still protesting the brutal hour, has begun to find its familiar working rhythm. The heavy calories of the morning porridge finally beginning to fuel your stride. With the intimate morning chores at the cottage now complete, you turn your back on the warmth of the barn and the rhythmic lowing of the cattle. You leave your small yard behind, stepping out onto the narrow, rutted lane to join the other silent, shadowy figures trudging with heads bowed toward the farmer's vast open fields, where the dark soil is waiting for the first plunge of the iron spade. Early spring on a Victorian farm in 1867 carries a unique, bracing promise, though it demands some of the most physically intensive and relentless labor of the entire agricultural calendar. The morning air is thick with the deep, honest, and earthy scent of the soil, warming under a pale, hesitant spring sun, a subtle but certain sign that the ancient land is finally ready to burst into new life after its long winter slumber. For a dedicated farm laborer, this sacred season of preparation begins at 6:30 a.m. Sharp, meeting the critical gaze of the tenant farmer at the edge of vast, open fields that seem to extend forever toward the misty horizon. Today, your entire world is narrowed down to the essential task of spring sowing, a critical, high-stakes operation that will ultimately determine the success or failure of the coming harvest months away. You stand at the boundary of the south field, feeling the weight of the heavy iron spade and the quiet anticipation of a long, rhythmic day of seasonal toil. You are handed a heavy canvas bag that hangs from a sturdy, worn strap across your body, filled to the brim with precious grain that represents the farmer's entire financial investment in the future. In this specific era, long before mechanical seed drills have become the common, universal standard, you must master the ancient art of broadcasting these seeds entirely by hand. You scoop a steady handful of grain from the bag, and with a wide, confident, and sweeping motion of your arm, you cast them in a perfect, shimmering arc across the dark, prepared earth. It is a practice requiring immense skill and concentration to ensure the seeds do not clump together in some spots while leaving other patches of soil bare and vulnerable. As you move, you watch the older workers like Thomas. Their movements are rhythmic, fluid, and almost graceful, covering the vast ground with a consistency that only comes from decades of lived, physical experience. This ancient method is far more than mere manual labor. It is a sophisticated bodily performance of timing and physical discipline passed down through generations. To achieve a uniform and healthy crop, you must maintain a precise, measured walking pace, that your body eventually is a deep subconscious memory, a private metronome ticking within your stride. If your pace falters even slightly, or if your throw becomes uneven due to fatigue, the harvest will inevitably suffer, wasting valuable land and seed. The farmer watches from the head of the field with a critical, silent eye, noting the technique of every worker, for the pressure to produce a high yield filters down from the landowner to you in every measured step. Within an hour, your shoulders and arm begin to ache from the repetitive sweeping motion, but the absolute necessity of the task pushes you forward through the damp, resisting soil. Close your eyes for a moment and sink deeply into the meditative, hypnotic cadence of the sowing line. Step, reach, throw. Step, reach, throw. Feel the rhythmic, fluid flow as your entire body settles into the work, shedding the distractions of the modern mind. Listen to the soft, gentle, and consistent patter of the seeds as they fall against the dark, crumbly earth, a sound like a quiet, localized rain, falling only for the soil. There is a profound, meditative quality to this process, the comforting weight of the bag against your hip, the rough, cool texture of the grain flowing through your fingers, and the wide arc of your arm. Behind you, the heavy iron harrows, pulled by the massive, straining draft horses, scrape and bounce across the ground, carefully covering the seeds and protecting them from the hungry birds that circle hopefully in the bright spring sky. The sun climbs slowly higher in the pale blue sky, and sweat begins to soak through your rough cotton shirt, yet the spring air remains refreshingly cool against your skin. You find yourself lost in the repetitive, holy nature of the task, a direct, physical connection between your individual effort and the future sustenance of the entire community. There is a deep, quiet satisfaction in seeing the bare, dark earth transformed by your hands, one measured, patient step at a time. You become part of the landscape, a moving element of the field's own cycle of life. However, as you focus your entire being on the dark soil beneath your feet and the silver rhythm of the grain, a different, more metallic vibration begins to echo across the quiet valley. The steady, rhythmic clink, clink, clink of a hammer, striking a glowing anvil in the distance, draws your attention, pulling your gaze away from the brown furrows and toward the rising smoke of the village forge. As the long, demanding day of spring, sowing finally draws to a slow and weary close, you find yourself walking toward the heart of the village, instinctively drawn by a low, rhythmic vibration that echoes through the rapidly cooling air. The village blacksmith's shop stands as a steady, reliable beacon in the deepening twilight, glowing with a deep, pulsing orange light that spills generously out onto the narrow lane, contrasting sharply with the darkening violet blue of the English evening sky. Inside the heavy stone walls, the radiant heat from the forge creates a welcome and profound warmth, a private sanctuary against the lingering, biting chill that inevitably settles over the countryside once the sun has dipped below the horizon. This is the beating heart of the community's mechanical life, a sacred place where the heavy iron tools of your daily labor are birthed, mended, and reborn through the ancient partnership of fire, carbon, and human strength. The forge is always alive with a quiet, purposeful activity, serving as a vital gathering place for local tenant farmers and weary laborers who perch on makeshift wooden seats or lean heavily against the soot-stained walls, their shadows dancing in the flickering firelight. They come to have their heavy, weathered iron plowshares sharpened to a keen edge, or to repair the metal implements that have been worn smooth by years of resisting the stubborn soil. But the physical work of the blacksmith is only part of the magnetic draw of this place. These men are gathered here to exchange the vital news of the valley, the state of the surrounding wheat crops, the health of the lambing sheep, and the fluctuating market prices in the distant parish. You listen to the low, comforting murmur of their voices, thick with the rich local dialects of the soil, as they discuss everything from the existential threat of cheap grain imports to the simple joys of a recent cricket match. In this specific era of 1867, the blacksmith's forge serves as the essential, informal news network of the countryside, a central nervous system for the rural community, long before the invention of telephones or the arrival of rapid mass media. It is here, amidst the smell of hot iron and coal, that rumors are confirmed. Labor deals are struck with nothing more than a solemn handshake, and the collective oral wisdom of the valley is shared and preserved for the next generation. The blacksmith himself, moving with a practiced and powerful grace in his heavy leather apron, is the silent keeper of this community information. His shop a clearinghouse for the shared stories that bind these isolated farmsteads together into one resilient, unified body. You feel the immense strength of these social bonds, a web of mutual support and shared knowledge that makes this physically demanding life not only endurable, but deeply meaningful. Close your tired eyes for a long moment and let the specific industrial music of the forge wash over your weary mind, drowning out the worries of the day. Listen to the steady, rhythmic clink, clink, clink of the heavy hammer striking the glowing, red-hot anvil, a sound that feels like the very pulse of the village itself. Focus your attention on the sudden, sharp hiss of the iron as it is plunged into a deep vat of cold water to temper the metal, a sound of steam, cooling, and transformation. The air inside is thick and heavy with the scent of burning sea coal, hot metal, and the musky, honest warmth of gathered men. There is a deep, hypnotic comfort in these sounds, a sense of human mastery over the raw, wild elements of fire and iron. The world outside may be vast, cold, and uncertain, but here, within the glow of the forge, there is light, heat, and the steady, reassuring clang of honest progress. The atmosphere in the shop is one of quiet, honest camaraderie, a brief but essential respite from the solitary, back-breaking toil of the open fields. You watch the bright sparks fly from the anvil like tiny, dying stars, each one a fleeting testament to the human effort required to sustain this agricultural world. But the social hour at the forge is necessarily brief. The farmers eventually begin to drift back to their own dark cottages, under a sky brilliant with 1,000 stars, knowing that the natural seasons do not wait for conversation. The gentle, hesitant warmth of spring is doga bi te do de do sao chu in a n ta ji doma lish. The doma litvagoi h pantino. The heavy heat of the summer is approaching, and with it comes the arrival of haymaking, the most urgent, communal, and weather-dependent task of the entire Victorian farming year. The warm, heavy, and liquid golden sun of early summer bathes the rolling, emerald farmland in a thick, honey-like light as you step slowly outside your cottage, marking the long-awaited and vital start of haymaking. Several quiet weeks have passed since you first arrived in this Victorian world of 1867, and the landscape has completely transformed into a vibrant, waving expanse of life. The wheat fields, which were nothing but bare, dark soil when you first helped with the spring sowing, now ripple with knee-high green stalks that dance in the midday breeze. The vegetable garden beside your heavy wooden door flourishes with climbing peas, sturdy cabbages, and potato plants, spreading their broad leaves across the rich, dark earth. Your own body, too, has begun its own subtle, internal transformation. The once painful blisters on your palms have hardened into thick, protective calluses, and your muscles, which once screamed in daily protest, have developed a lean, sinewy strength that the local farmers call condition, the resilience of a person built for the soil. As you approach the great meadow, the sweet, intoxicating, and slightly dusty scent of mown grass drifts heavily across the warm air, signaling the start of the most critical, communal, and weather-dependent task of the entire agricultural year. You take your place in a steady, synchronized line of experienced workers, each clutching a heavy, razor-sharp scythe, an ancient, curved hand tool with a long wooden handle that remains the beating heart of the harvest on these traditional farms. You watch Thomas, his movements fluid, rhythmic, and almost dance-like in their grace, as he swings the long blade in smooth, powerful arcs that slice through the tall, seeding grass with a hypnotic, whispering swish. Scything is an ancient art that requires the participation of the entire body. You must maintain the precise angle of the blade, the right arc of the swing, and a steady, measured forward pace, letting the weight of the tool do the work rather than forcing it with raw, modern tension. As you take your first stroke, you begin to find that same elusive, ancient rhythm Thomas described, feeling the direct, physical connection between your movement and the steady, peaceful transformation of the wild meadow into ordered rows of drying food. This labor is driven by a quiet, persistent, and desperate urgency, for haymaking is entirely at the mercy of the unpredictable English climate. The farmer has announced 3 days of guaranteed sunshine, a blessing that is crucial because the cut grass must lie under the heat of the sun to dry thoroughly, turned several times a day by the practiced hands of women and children using long wooden rakes to expose the damp undersides to the drying. There is a terrifying hidden reason for this exacting precision. Hay must be perfectly bone dry before it is ever stored in the darkness of the barn. If it is gathered while even slightly damp, the trapped moisture can cause the hay to heat up internally through fermentation, sometimes reaching temperatures high enough to trigger spontaneous combustion. A single damp load of grass could lead to a catastrophic, unstoppable fire, destroying a farmer's entire winter food supply, their livestock survival, and their very livelihood in a single tragic night. Close your tired eyes for a moment and sink deeply into the slow, repetitive, and ancient music of the summer meadow. Focus your mind on the steady, rhythmic swish, swish of the blades and the heavy, sweet aroma of the drying grass rising like incense in the shimmering heat of the afternoon. Feel the warm sweat soaking slowly through your rough cotton shirt and the steady grounding vibration of the scythe's wooden handle in your calloused palms. There's a festive, communal, and deeply satisfying quality to this collective work. Young children run errands and carry cool water while 3 generations of families work side by side, passing down the ancient skills of survival through direct, silent participation. In this sun-drenched moment, you are no longer an individual. You are part of a unified body, a human machine working in perfect, timeless harmony with the sun, the wind, and the soil to secure the farm's existence through the coming winter. As the afternoon sun finally begins its slow, majestic descent toward the horizon, the once wild meadow is now dotted with hundreds of haycocks, small, golden tents of grass arranged with precision to shed the heavy evening dew while allowing the air to circulate. The day's work has been exhausting, a massive physical toil that has left your muscles trembling. But there is a profound, holy satisfaction in seeing the standing grass transformed into these neat, shimmering rows. You trudge slowly back toward the lane, your muscles aching with a familiar, honest, and earned fatigue that feels like a heavy weight anchoring you to the deep earth. But as the meadows are cleared and the last of the light fades into a brilliant, violet sky filled with 1,000 stars, the quiet of the farm is gradually replaced by a new anticipation. The village is already preparing for its weekly transformation as the solitary toil of the fields gives way to the bustling human commerce and the deep social connections of the upcoming market day. Having completed your essential chores at the break of dawn, you are granted a rare reprieve from the fields to visit the nearest village market. The journey is a steady 3-mile walk along narrow lanes bordered by ancient hedgerows, now white with the soft, fragrant dusting of hawthorn blossom. The morning air is remarkably sweet, heavy with their floral scent, and alive with the low, busy hum of insects darting between the flowers and the warming light. As you approach the village, the profound silence of the farm is gradually replaced by a distant, rising cacophony, a mixture of human voices, the bleating of sheep, and the rhythmic rattle of wooden carts that marks this vital weekly gathering. The village center has transformed from its usual quiet state into a bustling hub of commerce and social activity. The market square is a patchwork of activity, where farmers display their fresh produce on rough wooden tables or directly from the backs of their carts. You weave through a maze of stalls offering vibrant vegetables, early fruits, baskets of eggs, and rounds of golden cheese. In one corner, livestock sellers cluster near temporary pens, their sheep, pigs, or cattle, huddling together as potential buyers inspect them with critical, experienced eyes. Nearby, local craftsmen offer practical items for the home and farm sturdy pottery, woven baskets, and wooden implements worn smooth by the artisan's touch. The air is thick with the smell of damp wool, fresh baked bread, and the honest, pungent aroma of the livestock. As you observe the dealings, you notice a surprising reality of Victorian commerce. Many of these vital transactions involve no physical currency at all. While coins do occasionally change hands, a vast portion of the market's business relies on the ancient system of direct bartering. You watch as a basket of fresh eggs is traded for a length of sturdy cloth, or a promise of future labor is exchanged for a much-needed tool. These agreements are sealed not with written contracts or lawyers, but with nothing more than a solemn handshake and a direct look in the eye. This informal economy functions on a foundation of mutual trust and long-term relationships built over generations. Beyond its economic function, market day serves as a crucial social anchor for farm families, who might otherwise go days without seeing anyone outside their immediate household. It is an opportunity to exchange news, arrange future cooperative work, and maintain the community bonds essential to rural survival. You notice how these interactions follow invisible, but clearly understood social patterns, with farmers, laborers, and landowners navigating their relative positions with subtle variations in manner. Children weave through the crowd on errands, already learning the complex social choreography they will one day perform as adults. Close your tired eyes for a moment and let the distant hum of the crowd become a soothing white noise in your mind. Focus on the slow, unhurried pace of the people as they drift between the stalls, their movements dictated by the rhythm of conversation. Listen to the soft, melodic lilt of the local dialects as neighbors exchange warnings of predators, like a fox taking lambs, or the dreaded signs of potato blight appearing in a neighbor's field. There is a profound sense of belonging here, a feeling of being a single thread in a vast, interconnected community. Feel the warmth of the sun on your back and the solid weight of the few small items you've purchased, a bone comb, and some thread for mending. The bustling energy of the market begins to wind down as the afternoon shadows stretch across the square, and farmers pack their unsold goods back into their creaking carts. You begin the long walk back to the farm, your mind filled with the voices and faces of the day. The hawthorn blossoms seem to glow in the twilight, marking the path home through the deepening indigo. But the season of socializing is brief, for nature is moving toward its grandest conclusion. As the days grow shorter and the air turns crisp, the green fields you sowed in the spring are undergoing their final transformation. The grain is turning to a brilliant, heavy gold, signaling the arrival of the wheat harvest, the absolute peak of the year. The calendar turns to the golden days of August, and the Victorian farming landscape undergoes its most dramatic and critical transformation. The haymaking that occupied your midsummer is now a memory, with the barn lofts packed tight with the sweet-smelling grass that will sustain the livestock through the coming frost. Now, the air carries a different, more urgent quality, still warm with the remnants of summer, but with a subtle, underlying crispness that hints at autumn's approaching embrace. You rise before the roosters have even considered their morning calls, dressing in the pre-dawn darkness of your cottage. Today marks the beginning of the wheat harvest, the absolute culmination of the work you began months ago, when the soil was still cold and the seeds were nothing but potential in your hands. As you step out into the fields, the sight is breathtaking. Acres of golden stalks stand tall and heavy, their heads nodding gently in the morning breeze like a vast, shimmering sea. This crop is the farm's most precious asset, representing not just food, but the economic survival of the entire community. Thomas hands you a sickle, a curved, razor-sharp iron blade with a short wooden handle. Unlike the long-handled scythe you used for hay, the sickle requires you to work close to the earth, bending low to grasp bunches of wheat stalks with your left hand while cutting them with a swift, practiced motion of your right. It is slow, back-breaking work that demands a constant, rhythmic focus. Grab, cut, place. Grab, cut, place. The physical toll of the harvest is immense, yet it is tempered by a profound sense of shared purpose. Behind the reapers come the gatherers, often the women and older children, who collect the fallen stalks and bind them into bundles called sheaves. These sheaves are tied together with twisted strands of the wheat itself, a task requiring nimble fingers and a sturdy grip to ensure they hold together during transport. The heat of the midday sun beats down on your back, and sweat begins to stream down your face and back, but no one stops. The pressure is constant, for the wheat must be cut and dried before the weather turns. You work alongside a relative novelty, a horse-drawn mechanical reaper that has been hired from a neighboring farm. The machine is an impressive, clattering sight, a wheeled platform with mechanical arms that sweep the standing grain against cutting blades. It cuts a swath far wider than any worker with a sickle could manage, dramatically increasing the speed of the harvest. Yet, progress comes with a price. Thomas watches the machine with appreciation mixed with concern, knowing that while it makes the work faster, it also means fewer hands will be needed in the future. Even with this mechanical assistance, the work remains labor-intensive, with every sheaf still requiring careful binding and stacking. Close your eyes and immerse yourself in the heavy, golden atmosphere of the harvest field. Listen to the dry, papery rustle of the wheat as it is gathered, and the rhythmic metallic shir of the sickle blades through the stalks. Focus on the scent of the sun-warmed grain and the fine, golden dust that rises into the air, coating your skin and catching the light like tiny floating embers. Feel the weight of the sheaves as you stand them in groups of 10, creating the characteristic stooks or shocks that dot the landscape. There is a deep, primal satisfaction in this labor, the physical manifestation of your strength, being converted into the community's security, one handful of grain at a time. As the sun begins its descent, the field has been transformed from a waving sea of gold into an ordered landscape of shocks, standing ready to dry in the wind. The farmer watches the western horizon with an anxious, practiced eye, for even now, a single heavy rainstorm could sprout the grain in the ear and ruin months of effort. You join the other workers in a slow trudge back to the village, your muscles aching with a fatigue that is both punishing and deeply rewarding. Behind you, the poorest members of the parish, the widows and children, begin to move through the harvested sections, carefully gleaning the individual stalks missed by the main harvest, a right protected by ancient custom. This shared abundance signals the end of the year's greatest struggle, and as the moon rises over the empty fields, the anticipation of the harvest feast begins to warm the cooling air. The heavy wheat harvest is finally secured, the last of the golden sheaves safely tucked away in the dry dark of the barns, and a profound, bone-deep sense of relief washes over the entire farm, replacing the frantic, sun-drenched urgency of the previous weeks. To mark this monumental achievement, the farmer provides a grand, traditional feast known as the Harvest Supper, held within the vast, echoing space of the largest barn, which has been meticulously cleared of heavy equipment and decorated by the community. Tall iron lanterns are hung from the ancient, soot-stained wooden rafters, casting a warm, flickering, and constant amber glow over the gathered workers and their tired families. This light transforms the functional, dusty space into a golden sanctuary of celebration, where the shadows dance softly against the stone walls. You take your place at one of the long, unvarnished wooden tables, feeling the rare, exquisite luxury of a still body and the comforting, thick aroma of a feast that represents the absolute best of the season's local produce. The tables are laden with an incredible abundance seldom seen in your daily, frugal life. Succulent roast meats glistening with their own juices, heavy savory pies with golden, flaky crusts, and piles of fresh and preserved vegetables, pulled directly from the kitchen garden. For many of the laborers sitting beside you, this is the most substantial, diverse, and nourishing meal of the entire calendar year, a brief but glorious experience of absolute plenty. You listen with a half-smile as an elderly farm worker, his skin like weathered parchment, produces a well-worn fiddle, and another joins in with a small concertina. The cool evening air soon fills with the rhythmic, energetic, and infectious sounds of traditional jigs and reels, the ancient music of the soil. These are the dances of the earth itself, passed down through the centuries, inviting everyone from the youngest child with bright eyes to the most weathered reaper with silver hair to join in the collective, wordless joy of a mission successfully accomplished. In the soft, flickering light of this magical evening, something truly remarkable happens to the rigid, uncompromising structures of Victorian life. For this one night, the sharp, jagged lines of social class begin to fade into the background. You sit shoulder to shoulder with the tenant farmer and his elegant family, sharing the same heavy bread and the same dark ale as true equals in the success of the harvest. The farmer eventually stands to offer a rare, heartfelt public acknowledgement of the deep interdependence of the farm, speaking in a low, gravelly voice as he thanks every single hand that swung a sharp sickle or bound a heavy sheaf. It is a moment of profound social cohesion, a quiet recognition that despite the harsh hierarchies of the British Empire, the survival of this small community is a shared burden, a shared sweat, and ultimately a shared victory. The physical environment of the barn itself seems to participate in the warmth. The thick stone walls, which usually feel cold and imposing, now radiate the collective heat of the gathered bodies and the dozens of flickering candles. You watch the steam rising from the large communal platters, curling in the lantern light like tiny ethereal spirits. There is no rush tonight, no looming deadline at the break of dawn, only the slow, deliberate enjoyment of the present moment. You feel a deep connection to the people around you, the men you plowed with in the freezing spring rain, the women who turned the hay in the blistering July sun, and the children who gleaned the final stalks of wheat under the harvest moon. This supper is the glue that binds the social fabric of the parish together, a shared memory of abundance that will be recounted during the lean, dark months of the winter to come. Close your eyes for a long, peaceful moment, and let the immense sensory richness of the barn envelop your spirit, pulling you deeper into a state of quiet, reflective meditation. Focus your mind on the soft, pulsing golden warmth of the lantern light as it dances across the weathered, honest faces of your friends and neighbors. Listen intently to the low, steady, and hypnotic drone of the concertina and the comforting, rhythmic murmur of shared stories, ancient tales of harvests past, of mysterious weather signs in the stars, and of the incredible resilience of those who live and die by the land. The air you breathe is thick and satisfying, scented with the aroma of wood smoke, sweet apple cider, and the lingering dusty perfume of the hay stored in the nearby lofts. Feel the last remnants of physical tension finally draining from your limbs, replaced by a heavy, honest, and earned satisfaction that only comes from labor that has reached its fruitful, golden conclusion. The celebration continues late into the deepening evening, a bright, defiant island of warmth and music in the vast, darkening countryside. There is a deep, communal peace in this barn, a sense of absolute safety found in the knowledge that the granaries are full to the brim and the long winter ahead has been provided for. You find yourself drifting slowly in the swaying melody of the fiddle, your mind becoming as calm and still as the empty, harvested fields outside the barn doors. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses begin to soften, becoming a distant, muffled background to your own thoughts. You realize that you have become a part of this landscape, no longer a stranger to its rhythms, but a participant in its ancient, seasonal dance. The exhaustion you feel is not a burden, but a badge of belonging, a physical proof of your contribution to the community's survival. But as the last, lingering notes of the music fade into the rafters and the oil lanterns are slowly, one by one, extinguished, the natural world continues its inevitable, silent turn. The festivities must eventually end, for the air outside the stone walls is beginning to sharpen once more with a new intensity. The vibrant energy of the night begins to settle into a quiet, respectful hush as families gather their coats and prepare for the walk home. You stand and stretch your muscles, feeling the grounding weight of your body and the warmth of the meal still radiating within you. As you walk slowly back to your small cottage under a brilliant sky filled with 1,000 diamonds, you feel the first sharp bite of the winter frost settling silently over the golden stubble of the harvested fields, signaling the official start of the year's quietest, coldest, and most introspective chapter. The cycle is nearly complete, and the earth is preparing for its well-earned rest. The golden, frantic energy of the harvest has finally subsided, and by the time November settles over the Victorian landscape of 1867, a completely different, more internal rhythm takes hold of the farm. The vast open fields you once sowed and reaped are now bare, brown, and skeletal, stripped of their vibrant life and left to sleep under a heavy iron-gray sky that seems to press down upon the rolling hills with a silent, freezing weight. The biting wind whistles through the leafless hedgerows, creating a lonely, hollow sound, and the ground has turned into a treacherous mosaic of frozen mud and silver frost. Outdoor work has become a constant, draining battle against the elements, and so the primary labor of the season moves inside the massive shadowed sanctuary of the cold stone barn. This is the time of the threshing, the final, laborious, and deeply repetitive process of separating the precious grain from the dry, papery husks and stalks. Inside the barn, the air is still and sharp, smelling of ancient stone, dry straw, and the faint, lingering scent of summer's dust. You stand on the central threshing floor, a smooth, hard surface made of tightly packed clay or seasoned oak planks, designed to withstand the rhythmic, heavy pounding of the winter months to come. Your primary tool is the flail, two sturdy wooden poles, joined together by a flexible, ancient hinge of tough, oil-treated leather. It is a deceptively simple instrument that requires a specialized, whole-body coordination to master without causing injury to yourself or those working beside you in the dim, gray light. You lift the longer handle, and with a calculated, swinging motion of your broad shoulders, you bring the shorter beater down with a heavy, flat impact against the layers of dried wheat spread across the floor. In the freezing, stagnant air of the barn, this repetitive, high-impact task quickly generates a deep, radiating warmth within your muscles, providing a natural, internal defense against the chill that seeps through the thick, unyielding stone walls. As the long, slow hours pass in the dim, cathedral-like space, a fine, golden-brown dust begins to rise from the beaten stalks, dancing and swirling in the thin, pale shafts of winter light that filter through the high, narrow windows. While beautiful to look at, resembling tiny floating embers or microscopic stars suspended in the air, this threshing dust is a constant, silent hazard to the lungs of every laborer, a gritty substance that can cause a persistent, hacking cough if inhaled for too long. To protect yourself, you follow the ancient tradition of the barn floor. You tie a coarse linen cloth or a folded neckerchief tightly over your nose and mouth, masking your face against the invisible particles. Your entire world narrows down to the small circular space between your feet and the rhythmic, arc-like movement of the wooden poles. Your breathing becomes slow, heavy, and filtered through the fabric as you become an anonymous, tireless part of the barn's industrial pulse. Close your tired eyes for a long, meditative moment and sink deeply into the solid grounding acoustics of the winter barn. Listen to the heavy rhythmic thack of the flail as it strikes the grain, a sound that is both percussive and strangely soothing in its absolute, unwavering consistency. Focus your mind on the subtle, accompanying sounds. The soft, dry rustle of the straw as it is turned over with a wooden fork, and the rhythmic, dragging shuffle of your own heavy leather boots on the dusty floor. There is a profound hypnotic peace to be found in this labor the physical world outside, with its freezing winds and darkening, stormy skies, feels infinitely far away. Here, in the belly of the barn, there is only the movement, the sound, and the steady, honest transformation of the harvest into the life-giving flower that will sustain the entire parish. Through the coming frost, the physical exertion brings a dull, satisfying ache to your shoulders and back, a physical reminder of the incredible strength you have carefully built since that first day. In the cold spring rain, you find a strange, solitary comfort in the isolation of the task, the way the high, cobwebbed rafters seem to absorb the noise and leave you a private, focused cocoon of effort. The dust settles on your eyelashes and your heavy woolen coat like a fine, golden powder, a tactile proof of the steady progress you are making with every deliberate strike. There is no frantic urgency here, no race against the setting sun or the impending rain. There is only the patient, unhurried persistence of the winter, a time for the earth to rest and for the farmer to refine the fruits of the previous year's toil. You are the steady heartbeat of the farm in this moment, the pulse that ensures the village's survival. You find yourself drifting into a state of flow, where the weight of the flail feels like an extension of your own arms. You watch the grains of wheat bounce and settle on the floor, each one a tiny, hard-earned treasure. The work is repetitive, yes, but in that repetition lies a rare form of mental clarity. Your mind wanders through the memories of the past season, the silver mists of March, the golden heat of July, the communal laughter of the harvest supper. All those moments have led to this quiet, solitary space. The barn feels like a fortress, protecting the essence of the year's work from the biting winter gales that howl outside the heavy oak doors. You are part of an ancient lineage of workers who have stood on this very floor, performing this very task for centuries before you. But the winter days are startlingly short in this era, before the luxury of artificial light. By 4:00 p.m., the pale, weak sun has already begun its rapid, inevitable retreat behind the jagged, dark line of the western hills, and the deep, velvet shadows of the barn begin to lengthen and merge until the threshing floor is swallowed by the dark. The cold, which you had successfully fought off with the heat of your labor, begins to return with a new sharp intensity, biting at your fingers and numbing your toes through your socks. It is time to set aside the wooden flail, to shake the golden dust from your clothes, and to retreat from the vast, freezing barn. You trudge slowly across the frozen yard toward the small, flickering orange glow of your cottage window, seeking the only true heat you know, the steady, pulsing heart of the domestic hearth. As you step back into the familiar, low-ceilinged sanctuary of your small stone cottage, the heavy wooden door clicks shut with a solid, final sound, a wooden thud that seems to seal out the entire world of 1867. The transition from the freezing, vast silence of the farmyard to the intimate, amber-lit warmth of your home is immediate and profound. You move slowly, your movements heavy with a tired but deeply satisfied grace, as you settle before the dark hearth. With practiced, patient hands, you begin the ritual of rekindling the fire. You lean forward, feeling the stiffness in your joints, and gently coax the small coal embers back into a steady, pulsing orange glow. As the flames catch and begin to lick at the fresh fuel, you find yourself lost in the hypnotic, swaying dance of the light, watching the tiny sparks spiral upward into the soot-stained chimney. This is the very same hearth where your story began in the damp, uncertain chill of March, and as you watch the fire, you feel the entire circle of the year closing around you like a protective, warm, and invisible embrace. The long winter evening stretches out before you, characterized by a quiet domestic industry that defines this season of rest. By the week, flickering light of a single tallow candle, you spend these solitary hours engaged in the slow work of maintenance. You mend the wooden tools that have served you so faithfully through the seasons, or you use a heavy needle to sew the thick woolen clothes that have shielded you from the biting winds. The needle moves rhythmically through the coarse fabric, push, pull, slide, creating a tiny, private world of focus within the long, dancing shadows of the room. There is no rush tonight, no looming deadline at the break of dawn, and no urgent call from the fields. There is only the slow, deliberate enjoyment of the present moment. You look down at your hands in the candlelight hands that were once soft and unacquainted with the demands of the soil, but are now mapped with thick calluses, ingrained earth, and the honest, silvery scars of the season. You are no longer a stranger observing this landscape from afar. You have been forged by it, a silent, vital participant in the eternal cycle of labor, survival, and now, the long-awaited peace. Outside the frosted window panes, a profound and holy transformation is taking place. A soft, relentless, and heavy snow has begun to fall, smoothing the rugged, scarred contours of the plowed fields and the jagged lines of the hedgerows into a pristine, white, and silent wilderness. The landscape you worked so hard to shape and harvest is being tucked away under a cold, heavy blanket, isolating your cottage in a silence that we can hardly imagine in our modern, frantic world. There are no distant engines, no humming electrical wires, and no artificial glow of city lights. On the horizon there is only the absolute, muffled, and heavy stillness of a rural Victorian winter night. This isolation is not lonely. It is a sacred, meditative peace that protects your spirit and your rest. The world has grown small, intimate, and safe, centered entirely on the gentle warmth of your hearth and the steady, rhythmic beat of your own calm heart. Close your tired eyes for a long, meditative moment and let the immense sensory richness of the cottage envelop your weary mind. Focus your attention on the soft, rhythmic crackle of the fire, a tiny, snapping music that punctuates the silence. Feel the heavy, leaden feeling in your muscles as they are finally allowed to fully, completely relax. Every ache in your shoulders, every throb in your weathered hands, and every lingering tension in your legs begins to dissolve into a warm, humming vibration of earned fatigue. The air you breathe is thick, comforting, and satisfying, scented with the aroma of drying oak wood, the earthy, musky smell of your wool coat, and the clean, sharp scent of the cold night air that clings to the edges of the heavy doorframe. You are safe, you are warm, and the granaries of the farm are full to the brim. There is nothing left to do, no more roles to play, but to surrender to the overwhelming, honest, and profound peace of the winter evening. As the candle burns low, its wick curling into the melting wax, and the fire settles into a deep, radiating, and reliable heat, you finally move toward your bed. You lie down on your straw mattress, the dried stalks from the summer harvest rustling softly beneath your weight, providing a final tactile connection to the golden meadows of July. Pulling the heavy hand-woven blankets up to your chin, you look out through the small, paned window at the vast, unpolluted night. The sky is a deep obsidian velvet, free of any modern haze, offering a view of the heavens that feels infinite, ancient, and deeply comforting. You watch the stars begin their slow, majestic, and silent wheel across the frozen sky, their ancient light reaching down through the cold to touch the sleeping earth. The year 1867 is turning toward its final, quietest hour, and you are turning with it, drifting effortlessly and safely toward the soft boundary of sleep. The stars wheel slowly overhead in a majestic, silent, and timeless dance. These are the same brilliant and indifferent stars that have guided, comforted, and watched over the ancestors of this land for 1,000 generations. They hang like cold, brilliant diamonds against the deep, obsidian velvet of the winter sky, marking the eternal passage of time that exists far beyond the temporary struggles of the soil and the seasons. As the last embers in your hearth fade from bright orange to a soft, pulsing gray ash, you finally surrender to the irresistible, heavy weight of your body. You find yourself drifting effortlessly into a deep, dreamless, and restorative sleep. Your mind, finally untethered from the demands of the day's toil, begins to wander through a soft landscape of dreams, dreams filled with the sweet, lingering smells of sun-dried hay, the rich, moist scent of freshly turned earth, and the rhythmic, comforting pulse of the turning season. You have survived a day and an entire year that would surely break a modern body, and in doing so, you have forged a powerful, unbreakable, and sacred connection to the very core of human survival. You are no longer just an inhabitant of 1867. You have become a living link in an ancient, resilient chain of patience, endurance, and hope. Feel the immense, grounding weight of the thick woolen blankets as they settle over you, sealing in the warmth of your rest and anchoring you to this perfect moment of peace. Listen to the absolute, profound, and heavy stillness of the rural Victorian night-day silence, so deep it feels like a physical presence, wrapping your cottage and the entire valley in a cocoon of absolute safety. There is no sound of machines, no hum of technology, and no pressure of the future, only the slow, patient, and quiet breath of the frozen earth waiting for the distant return of the spring. The physical exertion of the entire year has prepared your body for this exact moment of total surrender. Every mile you walk through the spring mud, every heavy sheaf of wheat you bound under, the harvest moon, and every strike of the flail on the threshing floor has led to this perfect, earned stillness. Your breathing slows down, becoming deep and rhythmic, matching the calm, silent rhythm of the winter world outside your door. You are part of the landscape now, a moving element of the field's own cycle of life, finally allowed to pause and fade into the shadows of the night. The darkness is not empty or cold. It is full of the quiet, holy satisfaction of a life lived in absolute harmony with the natural world. You have played your part in the great, seasonal symphony of the earth. And now, the music has faded into a peaceful, resonant, and beautiful hum. Sleep well and deeply now, anchored by the heavy, honest satisfaction of a year lived with deep purpose. You may rest in total, unwavering, and absolute peace, knowing that when you finally wake, you will return to a world of modern comforts, a world of light, warmth, and ease that your ancestors made possible through their unyielding toil, their quiet sweat, and their forgotten sacrifices. Their hands built the very foundation of the world you inhabit, and their stories live on in the silence of the winter fields and the brilliance of the night sky above you. You are part of them, and they are part of you. The work is done. The giant harvest is in. The fire is banked. Sleep now, for the eternal stars are watching over you. The earth is waiting in the frost, and the cycle of the year is finally at rest. Sleep. Sleep well. Good night.